It's Monday, May 18th, and this is news and commentary from America's Heartland. You're watching Heartlander News. Hello, and welcome into Heartlander News. I'm Chris Stigall. Bill Maher, interestingly, who is no fan of this president, is deeply alarmed at the rise of Islam, meanwhile. You know, I mentioned a little while ago, James Tallarico, very, very concerned about theocracies. Well, Islamism, it doesn't get more theocratic than that. What you see going on in Iran, it doesn't get more theocratic than that. And Bill Maher is deeply concerned about the rise of antisemitism, not just throughout the United States, but around the world. And Islamism, on the other hand, it seems people are playing patty cake with it, almost flirting with it. In fact, there's some movements, I think, inside of what's supposedly conservatism, podcasts and digital streamers and the like, who I think are, well, I can't prove it, but I'll just say I have a feeling there's a unusual, if not cozy, relationship with some Islamist backers. That's my sense of it. Can't prove it, just a hunch. Who are driving this idea that Americans and Islamists share this common enemy in the Jew. Well, this is biblical too, of course. It has its roots, this kind of hatred for the people of Israel. This goes back to Alexander the Great and before that. So that's not new. Islamism, though, is certainly on the march. The slaughter of Christians in places like Nigeria, it's happening all over the world. And even guys like Bill Maher, who can't stand Donald Trump, are sounding the alarm. Listen to this in 103.
The Islamophobia is just as bad argument is simply a false equivalency. Can you name a Jewish professor who talks about Muslims the way they get talked about? No. Anti-Jewish crimes, hate crimes, now outpace anti-Muslim hate crimes 9-1. It's not a contest, and I'm certainly not saying do more of the other. I'm just saying these are the numbers, the facts, the reality. There is a frothing anxiousness for the literal extermination of this one group. And Democrats, where are you? If any, the Islamophobia.
Indeed. Where is the pastor who's concerned about the rise of Christian nationalism? Oh, that we would have a rise in the celebration of Christianity, because if we did, we certainly wouldn't have the anti-Semitism we're seeing right now. And that's exactly what Bill Maher, an avowed leftist, is asking of his own party, the Democrats. Where are you in disavowing this kind of hatred? He continued in 104 here.
And Democrats, where are you? If any other minority group was being talked about this way, you'd break out the kente cloth and have 10 benefit concerts. But because you see that so many of your brainwashed by TikTok constituents now have an unfavorable view of Israel, you indulge them when you should be correcting them. You don't tell your woke idiots Israel isn't a colonizer or an apartheid state or committing genocide, and that if you brats had to spend a week anywhere in the Middle East other than Israel, you would understand what liberalism is not. All the people likely running for president now on the Democratic side want it known they don't take money from AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, a stance which gives permission to actual anti-Semites to say, see, we're right about Israel. That's a dirty money from a dirty country. Oh, please. You take money from crypto and factory farmers and big tech, from Diddy and Weinstein and Epstein, but AIPAC is too far? Let me just say this to all who ask me, why are you harder on the Democrats than you used to be? Until you fix this whole issue, stop asking me. Thank you.
You know, I may not agree with Bill Maher on a whole lot, but that is pretty profound. And the Democrats are in real trouble, and they know it, and they're starting to freak out about it, because as they look down the barrel of the midterms and they're looking toward November, there is a real question about the redistricting that's been going on all over the country, and it's coming up again and again and again. They realize they don't have a message that's selling to the American people. In fact, the American people are still turning away from it. Guys like Bill Maher are still turning away from their own party. Doesn't mean they're necessarily enthused about the Republicans, I stress, but Democrats have a problem, and they know it. And as Republicans continue to move to codify their strength in their respective states, and as we're staring down the barrel of a 2030 census that will, reallocate districts and proportional votes, the forecast is pretty strong that Republicans will continue to gain while Democrats continue to shrink. This has been on their minds, obviously. In 106, Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland.
Do you support redrawing the lines before the midterms? What do you say to the charges? It's hypocritical.
Oh, I do if it's possible. Look, here's my view, Kristen. I've always supported nationwide, nonpartisan redistricting. We should put on a blindfold and we should draw congressional districts in nonpartisan ways. But Republicans have blocked that legislation at the federal level. Meanwhile, Trump has ordered Texas to engage in redistricting, which they did. So I am very much opposed to unilateral disarmament. I want to thank California for what they're doing, the Virginians for what they did despite their Supreme Court decision. And Maryland and other states should do what we can, because the future control of the House is at stake right here. And we need to do everything we can to prevent a continuation of what is a complete rubber stamp for Donald Trump. You heard Lindsey Graham. He said this is the party of Donald Trump. It is. It's a personality cult. And we need checks and balances, not a personality cult of rubber stamps.
I don't live in Maryland, but I have friends and family who do. And one of the most ridiculously gerrymandered states of the union is Maryland. In fact, I might be wrong about this, but I think Maryland might be one of those states that doesn't have a single or is down to a single Republican, I think. But neither here nor there. Chris Van Hollen says, oh, yeah, I think we should put on a blindfold and have a nonpartisan drawing of districts. Right. But you'll note for years and years and years and years, they have gerrymandered, some of the most ridiculous in places like Massachusetts and Illinois, for instance. It's been that way for years. Republicans have never had a damn thing to say about it, folks. Until Donald Trump came along and called it out and said, hey, the Democrats have completely snuffed us out in their respective states. Why the hell aren't the people who are in charge of the red states doing the same thing? Turnabout should be fair play, President Trump said. And he started calling up respective governors and legislative heads and saying, get to it, guys. And many states did. Indiana, as you well know, Indiana had a handful of state senators, squishy rhino types, who decided to not. And Donald Trump said, oh, really? Okay, well, if that's the way you're going to play, he and the National Republican Party poured a ton of money into some state Senate races in Indiana and completely flipped many of those Republicans and tossed them out to install some true Make America Great Again, America First Republicans in the state legislature of Indiana, and I'm sure they'll try it again. Message received. The Republican Party, the voters for the Republican Party, the voters for Donald Trump want a change. They are tired of the same old Republicans who go along to get along and they don't fight. And they're not willing to go as aggressively as the Democrats always have. And case in point, you see what happened in Louisiana this weekend. Devastating for Senator Bill Cassidy. Now, this is a guy who voted to impeach Trump. This is a guy that has been an antagonist, a Republican antagonist of Trump all the way, and President Trump's never had much time for him and has promised to primary him for some time. Well, in Louisiana, they have a closed primary, which means if you're a registered Republican, you can vote Republican, and that's the only way you can do it. There is no open primary, meaning anybody can walk into the poll, ask for a Democrat ballot, Republican ballot, and monkey around with it. You've got to be a declared Republican to vote for Republicans in Louisiana. And as such, the Republicans came out over the weekend to select their candidates going forward for the Republican Party. And in the race for Senate, of the three who were on the ballot, Bill Cassidy, the incumbent Republican senator from Louisiana, came in third. Meaning the Republicans in Louisiana rejected their incumbent sitting Republican senator. Again, just like in Indiana, the state senators were tossed. The Republican Party is not the party of Mitt Romney, who, by the way, issued his condolences to Senator Cassidy over the weekend on X. What a fine man he is. All the wrong people, in my estimation, are coming to the defense of Bill Cassidy. Here's Mayor Pete, aforementioned Pete Buttigieg, number 109 here. Mayor Pete telling us what a fine guy. It's so interesting how these Republicans who get their butts kicked by the party, when the Republican voter vanquishes them, it's always interesting how the Democrats come out to tell us what fine people these Republicans who their party has tossed, how great they are.
I do want to start with Senator Cassidy's defeat in Louisiana last night. It's just the latest example of the president successfully getting revenge against Republicans who cross him. What do you make of that?
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, in my experience, Senator Cassidy is a normal, honest, and very conservative Republican. And it turns out people like that have less and less of a home in Donald Trump's Republican Party. We are seeing more and more extreme candidates put forward in their House and Senate races, which does create a big opening for Democrats. That doesn't mean that Democrats don't have to do the work, but I think it shows you that the Republican Party is organized less and less around conservative principles, more and more around one man. And as that one man remains deeply unpopular, they're having a very hard time convincing the rest of America to vote for them, which is why they're spending less time convincing their voters and more time rearranging voters and silencing voters through gerrymandering.
It's pretty rich coming from the party that quite literally shoved Kamala Harris down their throats. The Democrat Party has been jerry-rigging they've not only been gerrymandering their states, they have been rigging their primaries. They've been rigging their presidential prospects. They rigged it for the old man. They rigged it for the former senator from California. They rigged it for Mrs. Clinton over Bernie. That's why. Look, remember, today Tulsi Gabbard is part of President Trump's cabinet. She left the Democrat Party. Do you remember why? She used to be the number 2 in charge of the Democrat Party, Tulsi Gabbard. Do you remember that? A lot of people don't. And you know why she left? She left because, if you recall, when Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton were running in that second election that Hillary ran and lost, Bernie Sanders said, I want multiple debates with this woman. I'll debate her anywhere, anytime. And Mrs. Clinton said, oh, no. We're only going to have 3. And Bernie said, why only 3? Let's do a dozen. And Bernie had these long lines wrapped around the block to get into conventions and whatnot to celebrate him. Bernie had the mojo. He had the energy. Mrs. Clinton did not. But the Democrat Party rigged it for Mrs. Clinton under Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And Tulsi Gabbard had it. And so she walked. So again, it's pretty rich listening to Mayor Pete talk about how the party is rigging it around one man. This one man has weathered unbelievable storms to earn 77 million votes, Mr. Mayor. This man's been shot at. He's now been killed or nearly killed, or the attempt on his life has happened 3 times, at least, that we know of. He's been dragged through courts. His home's been raided. It's not a cult of personality. The American voter, people who supported Donald Trump, understand exactly what the situation is in Washington, D.C., and that is he is an affront to the organized crime that is Washington, D.C. The American voter sees it. They see him as a table turner, and they do not want Republicans who are go along to get along, establishment, old school. We've been doing it this way for the longest. It's why Thune is having terrible trouble with this filibuster thing. It's the same deal. Republican voters are ticked off, and they're not going to tolerate people saying, let's just stick to the old rules. Let's just stick to the old ways. Let's not cause too many problems. Let's not violate too many norms. And President Trump is breaking all the rules. He's saying we don't have to do it this way anymore. There's a different way. We've been kicking the can for decades. I don't want to kick the can anymore. This scares Democrats terribly. That's the bottom line. Brian Fitzpatrick is a Republican, sort of, in the 1st Congressional District of Pennsylvania. I know a little something about Mr. Fitzpatrick. He's been hanging on for dear life in the 1st District of Pennsylvania as a Republican, barely, voting with Democrats often, voting against this president often, just to court the purplish area. Got a lot of New Yorkers that come into Pennsylvania, into this area. Bucks County is where this is. Bucks County famously is, there was a little bit of chicanery there the last election. So keep a sharp eye on people like Brian Fitzpatrick who are out there also trying to hang on for dear life in a district that, again, is purple. In fairness to Mr. Fitzpatrick, from a political point of view, he's surrounded by a lot of Democrats. So he's trying to thread the needle, but the Republican Party just doesn't have time for that. Give me number 107 here. Listen.
Saw what happened overnight down in Louisiana, where Senator Bill Cassidy lost in this three-way primary. The president himself, the leader of your party who wanted this redistricting, has also been directly involved in some of these primary races, picking candidates. He came out hard against Cassidy. He's also now focusing in on Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who has taken votes in opposition to the president, including for the release of the Epstein files. I mean, is the message here for Republicans that if you dissent from the president, he's going to take you down?
Well, it's one of the many reasons, Margaret, why we need to open primaries up in all 50 states. Another cause that Tom and I are behind. Over half the states in this country have closed primaries, meaning that if you're a registered independent, you are excluded from voting in 50% of elections. And let's just put this into context. You could be a 98-year-old World War II veteran who stormed the beaches of Normandy, saved civilization, who registers independent in the land of independence, which we're celebrating 250 years of, and in half of the states of this country, including, unfortunately, our home state here in Pennsylvania, if you register independent, you're told you're not welcome to vote in half of elections. That is insane. And not only is it an injustice, Margaret, it has a terrible corrosive effect on the floor of the House. Tom and I see it all the time. We call it the vote no, hope yes crowd. They go to the House floor wanting to support a policy, knowing that policy is the right thing to do, but because they live in a closed primary state, and 18% of Americans vote in primaries, they're going to the House floor thinking about 18% of their electorate instead of 100% of their electorate. So closed primaries coupled with gerrymandering, your previous question, are really, really hurting our country. They're causing gridlock on the House floor.
Yes. So you see, being in the middle, and we come right back to it, the Republicans who like to sell this notion of being in the middle. You probably heard the old statement, the only thing you get when you're in the middle of the road is run over. That's exactly right. The reason, Mr. Fitzpatrick, there is no closed primary option for independents is because there is no such thing as the independent party. Now, listen, I understand that people call themselves independent because they're not particularly happy with the Republican Party. In fact, if you ask me, are you a Republican? I say, first, I'm a conservative. And I know not all Republicans are conservatives. I know the Republican Party has consistently not adhered to conservative principles. So let me say, I understand the point of view that you like to call yourselves an independent-minded electorate. But when it comes right down to it, it is a party system. And you can create an independent party if you want. In fact, go ahead, start one. Get yourself an independent candidate and have an independent, registered independent voter primary. You can do that too. Now, what Mr. Fitzpatrick wants is for anybody who's anybody to just walk into a polling place and request a Republican ballot or a Democrat ballot, meaning we all know what could happen there. Democrats could completely swamp a Republican primary and slip in some snake. People can just willy-nilly declare party affiliations, and you could get a real mess on your hands. These closed primaries force people to declare the party that they most closely align with and vote accordingly. And Mr. Cassidy just experienced what it means when Republicans band together and reject him. Guys like Fitzpatrick say, oh, I don't want that here. If you have that happen to him, he's in real trouble too, because he knows that the base Republican Party rejects the idea of bucking the one guy, the leader of the Republican Party, whether you like it or not, who's actually interested in getting things done and changing the dynamic in Washington, Donald Trump. It's not a cult of personality. It is a break with the norms that have us stagnant and not advancing, that has overseen the theft of this country's tax money, that has overseen the wide open border, that has overseen the transing of minors. The Republican Party, unfortunately, over the years pre-Donald Trump, have been stewards right along with the Democrats of watching the country in decline. And Donald Trump and the people who voted for Donald Trump said, enough, we want it stopped. And they believe that Donald Trump has the prescription and the vision and the passion to do it. And he's proven that. Most Republicans in Congress have not gone through what he's gone through, if any. Most of them do not know what it is to be shot at, dragged through courts, have their homes raided. Most in Congress don't know what Donald Trump has known, the hell he's walked through to get to where he is. And so the American public sees a battered and tested Donald Trump still fighting. They don't see that with the Republican Party, particularly the Republicans that want to join the Democrats in attacking Donald Trump. And so Republicans are rising up and punishing them. Some of these squishy Republicans say, well, you know, the problem is these closed primaries. No, the problem is you, sir. All due respect. The problem is the Republican Party has not done enough to back this president's agenda. And so the Republican voter is letting the Republican office holders know, we sent Donald Trump to do a job. We expect you to do the same. And if you're not up to the job, then you're out the door. It's a very good thing